Hey y'all, I'm Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. If we haven't met, I'm Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. And today we are here with the great Alan Driggers. And thank you, Alan, for being on the show.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your vocation, what you do for a living, all the things.
Well, most recently, I have been a special education teacher at a large school district and been overseeing a couple of different areas. I've kind of worn a lot of hats over the period, but most recently, I oversaw our behavior support for our special education students. I also was our campus 504 coordinator, so I got a little taste of 504s and kind of what all that is, and just the large number of students that have 504s. But my I would say my background and my passion has always been behavior. So, because I guess for whatever reason, I can identify with those kids a little more when I was younger, and so but yeah, I've done that, and then I have made the decision to retire from teaching and make a move into an advocate, full-time advocate.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your school time in school. So how long were you an educator?
14 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And so I'm always, nosy, and I'm an information junkie. When I started this journey with my son in the 90s, I just assumed that if you had a title, and I mean this in the nicest way, that you were specifically trained in that area. So we'll start with 504 and then we'll pivot to special education. When they made you the 504 guru or whatever your fancy title was, what training did they provide you for that?
None.
Oh, okay.
I mean, basically, I had to figure. I mean, I had a couple of scripts that were given to me. I had, I mean, I knew what a 504 was, but most of what I learned was self-taught that I went through, and then making myself comfortable. Obviously, I had a lot of questions, especially after the first year. But there won't be a second year, so I'm not really worried about it right now. But yeah, I mean, there really wasn't any training at all provided. I did have somebody that I did have a district person who actually was really wonderful, and she would help me with anything that I needed. But she also oversaw, we've got, I don't know, 15, 16 campuses. So I
Oh,
mean, it's not like she was at my beck and call. So.
right. So I've had the honor to, I am not a teacher. God bless teachers. I know they do it for the money and the fame, right? And I've had
Absolutely.
the opportunity in the last almost 3 decades to train a ton of teachers, and you might be the unicorn. But when we go back to school and we have that week before school, are they training you? So you're in special ed, you're working with kiddos with behaviors. Are you getting special training for your specific route or path that you're teaching?
So it varies. Honestly, it really does. So there is specific areas within special education that they'll teach, but as a whole, no. It's pretty much teachers teaching teachers is what it ended up being most of the time. We have outside vendors, that kind of who we use, the curriculum that we would use. They come in and speak, and actually they were quite good, but they really didn't talk about the processes. It's more about topics, curriculum, what you can do. the products that they offer that the district is, whether it be, we use a product to help with goals. We used a product to help with behaviors, and actually the behavior product was pretty good. Not easy to use, and so if you weren't trained on it, you probably just skipped it. And so a lot of it's done winging. When I moved into special education, so I was a coach for most of my teaching career, and before I was a teacher, I was in corporate America. Fell in love with coaching, kind of just go through that, and decided when my kids graduated high school that I was going to go do this full time, because what I loved, I was doing what I wanted to do instead of what I had to do. So I did coaching for a long time. Coaching was great. I had the opportunity to move into special education. I did that, and then I had the opportunity to kind of take over or lead a program, and so that required me to leave coaching. So when I did that, actually even before that, when I went into special education, it was never a case of getting taught. I mean, it was my partner taught me how to do IEPs, how to have meetings, how to fill out, and he was taught by somebody else. And so basically, you have teachers teaching teachers, and you don't know if you're right or wrong. Honestly, you have no idea. You get into a meeting, most parents I noticed don't really know a whole lot, so they don't say a whole lot. We as a school don't really offer a lot of information to parents other than what we wanted, just to get through this 30-45 minute meeting for an IEP. And so yeah, I mean, that's really kind of what I saw, when it was extremely frustrating for me, because I'm very much a processes person, and I wanted to, give me a diagram, give me a process, let me know what I need to do, because we've got all these forms, all these, I go on our software that we used, and there's all these different forms that we don't even ever touch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, obviously they're needed, because they wouldn't be there unless if they weren't needed. But I have no idea if I need them, don't need them, how to fill them out, I mean, it was just, so you really, what I found, most special education teachers are just swimming to keep their head above water. And unfortunately, that, they all, I think all of them mean well, want to do well, but they're just doing what they can to just enough to get by.
Yeah. So, and that's what I learned. I just assumed that if Miss Smith sitting in front of me and was a special educator, I thought a bunch of things. I thought she had a degree in special education. Um, and, and what little I know about that, that may or may not be helpful in the classroom anyway. So when it's teachers training teachers, and that's my exact position, teachers are amazing. I don't find teachers that are malicious, but if you've been taught wrong, I know as an advocate, when I come in, I think some of the the divisiveness is that I'm saying something that they believe, on a stack of Bibles and everything that they know, that what they're doing is correct. And so when you were in special education in a school district, did you ever have occasion to have parents bring advocates?
We've had a couple, not very many, a couple. And then of course, our policy was, if a parent brings an advocate, we are going to bring our attorney. And so
Wow.
they pretty much ran the meeting. We had very little, unless asked, or unless, a question is directed to us, we were to keep quiet. I mean, let the attorneys handle it. So, and
That's a pretty
typically
big
those are
move.
I was going to say, typically those just started confrontational. They always just started that way.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So, now that you're pivoting to be an advocate, kind of what brought you to that decision? You just decided it would be fun to do. Tell us how you got to that because that's a big
So,
decision, right? You and your family made that decision.
yeah, I have, since I was in special education, I've tried to make changes from the inside. And what I have seen, um, and to no fault of their own, I mean, most everybody on the campus level tried as hard as they could with what they did. But what I
Yeah.
saw was that the administrative level, you had people who had never been in a classroom ever. And so, the most amazing thing, and my wife and I was actually talking about this. So the amazing thing is, to be a principal well, I'm in Texas, like you, like yourself. To be a principal, you have to have at least 2 years of classroom experience. To be a
Okay.
counselor, you have to have at least 2 years of classroom experience. To be a superintendent, you've got to have 2 years of being a principal.
Oh,
So you have to have been in the classroom. Special ed director, doesn't matter. Special ed coordinator, doesn't matter. I mean, that your behavior folks will usually have credentialing, but your special ed administrative staff, it doesn't have to have any experience in the classroom. And oftentimes, what I found is they didn't. And so, or they had, they're, yeah, they haven't in a lot of districts that I have come across. Now that's not good or bad, I'm not saying, but it is frustrating for a teacher who's in the classroom. You have somebody who's never been there trying to tell you what to do. And they've never actually experienced it. So they think it's real simple. I tell you what to do, it's easy to be done. Um, but I tried to make a lot of changes from the inside, and what I saw and what I learned is that changes really aren't made unless they are put into a position, whether it be um, public relations, or oftentimes monetary, or whether that be they have to hire a teacher, an extra teacher, or whatever. Changes aren't really made, and so I decided to make the move from the outside. I had parents that I sat in meetings that, I'm like, you need to be asking this question or that question. And I was pretty much told that, yeah, don't do that. And so don't, we're not here to educate the parents. We're here to educate the student. I mean, that was kind of always the,
ouch.
and yeah. So I think they kind of go hand in hand to especially in
Right.
this realm. So that's really the reason I moved. I kind of got tired, disenchant, disheartened, disenchanted with trying to make changes in the school system, and it was usually at the top levels that would, you know, be the roadblock. So, anyways, that's why. I'll just give you an example, just example of how frustrating it was. So paperwork, which is a big piece of everything. We did not have a standard paper. They're trying now, but for all the time I was there was no standardization on what was expected, how it was done. So when you get a student, say I was at the high school level, when you get a student from the middle school level, or he comes from one of the other high schools, that we know where to look for things. We know where their BIP is. We know where their information is. We know their history. We can find all that. Well, when you don't have a standardization, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a simple task. Somebody you set up. I mean, it could have been the head of the department. They could have tasked somebody. I need you to come up with how it needs to look for everybody. And I don't think teachers would have a problem with that. I mean, even if it was
Mm.
additional work, I don't think. It's just they don't know. We do what we think is right, and hope and pray that we are.
Yeah, I know that, just from teachers, I teach simply to the basics, but obviously to the standard of the federal code. Have you ever been in a classroom or ever seen the federal law book in a school?
Well, I mean, I told you, I've mentioned to you before, a couple of years ago when I was watching your uh, TikToks and in your special education academy. You mentioned that nobody had it in the school, so I ordered one, and I had one sitting on my desk for basically 2 years, so that nobody could say we didn't have one in our school. So,
That's
other
funny.
than that, which was, I mean, that was just kind of just to do because of you, of you. No, I've never even been. We have never even been taught special education law, other than some very surface level, as
Right.
far as why we do stuff the way we do it.
Yeah, let me ask you some specific questions around that. So, Child Find 300.111 says that we, meaning the school, are charged with identifying, locating, evaluating children with suspected disabilities who may be in need of special education related services. Were you at least trained on that statute?
Well, so being at the high school, you're very hopeful that a student that needed special education had been identified before they got to me. What I learned and what I saw was, for the most, was I educated on it? No, absolutely not. But what I did find was that students that would get to the high school level, and you're going, okay, they need to be tested. There was always a real reluctance to test high school age students for an initial, an FIE, because yeah, I mean, especially if they've been in the district since day one, it was a bad perception. And so
Right.
there seemed to be more of a concern of the look than, what's best for the student. Even to the point of saying, yeah, we screwed up. They should have been in special ed as, elementary. Here, we're going to put together, compensatory minutes, or, do whatever we needed to do that's
Right.
going to rectify that. Um, so yeah, no, I have never. Style 5 would only come up whenever another teacher or somebody would say it, but from a professional development or training, no, never.
Were you able to, I started out my journey 100 years ago in 1996 was when my son was tested. And the lady sitting next to me at the school literally took a little piece of paper, folded it up tiny, and she handed it to me like by my leg. And I grabbed it like we were doing something illegal. And I got out and I got out in the parking lot and I read it. And it was a referral to a government agency. And I think the thing that grieves me the most in special education is here we sit 2025, and it's not any different from my experience that the teacher who's with your child 8 hours a day for 180 days a year cannot easily refer a child on their own for special education testing. Was that your experience?
So typically, I mean, will say this, especially as a 504 coordinator, we had some students that were in 504s that had no question needed to have an IEP. And so when I would refer them, our process was that it would go to the counselors who would do an observation, start everything, kind of get some input from teachers, and then they would, after that was gathered, I don't think there was really like a review or determination. It was, at that point they would request, consent, and then the process would start. So I can't really say I had a whole lot of issues getting students tested. I do know at different times, you get pushback maybe from a diet or something, just because their load was so big. They're like,
Right.
you can't add more students to me. I've already got all these that I
Yeah.
got to do. And so that was really the pushback. And I understand that, I mean, they are, the hours that they have to work, a number of hours, both on campus and at home, just to get, their caseload
Sure.
is, they needed, this district needs to hire, 2, 3, 4 more, across our district. So that, yeah. But no, I never really, I was fortunate that I never really had a problem getting students tested.
Awesome. When a couple of the basic things that I train on that gets lots of unhappy responses when I make a post about RDC, raw data collection sheets, and people go berserk. That's not true. That's not true. We do not have to collect data. So, it's an individualized education program and we have to measure it, right? Teachers do two things. They teach and right, they teach and measure. So, was there training for you? I know there wasn't a standardization, but was there training from you that Alan, you're going to have to take data on IEP goals? Alan, you're going to have to
So
track
in the
accommodations.
in the behavior side, so we had all of our students had what we call daily behavior report cards. So
Okay.
basically, it was a report from staff, that, that we used a program that we wanted the teachers to interact, have a discussion with that student, short 30-second, hey, you did great today, let's work on this tomorrow, kind of thing. And it can be done like in the door. I mean, it can be done just very casual. So when we first started doing that, the participation level was under 10%. a staff was doing it. So, I mean, the interesting thing is that we had analytics on all this, so we knew who and when and every, and what would end up happening over the years, over a couple of years, we would it would get, it didn't get any better. So you have 10% of your students that have behavior getting feedback on their behavior. So how do they know if they're doing right, wrong, anything? It would take, we got to the point of I was sending nasty emails to the staff basically saying, hey, if you don't do this, it's illegal. And I mean, it's a legal issue and this is part of your requirements, and we could get in a lot of trouble. And if a student has behaviors that needs to be sent to an alternative placement, we really can't do that because you're not filling out this paperwork,
Right.
because we're not fulfilling their IEP. And that would typically get a better response, but I honestly don't think we ever got over 50% over any extended period of time of data being completed. I mean, of the report cards being completed. As far as academic inclusion and whatnot, I think in resource there was no data. They're in the resource class, so we don't. That's where they're getting their minutes. So we're going to, the whole class is counted as we're implementing their IEP.
Wow.
Inclusion, kind of the same thing. The inclusion teachers would group them into their software, and so if Johnny and Susie are in the class for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, then they've gotten 45 minutes worth of their data, so their data checks off. That's kind of how we did it. So it was never individualized. It was all grouped in as students, and so you also get into who's gathering the data,
Right.
and so that was another concern that I always had.
Yeah.
So
I had a kiddo the other day. I think she had 11 goals, and literally for every grading point, there's 4 grading points in this district. She literally was at 50, 60, 70, and 80. And I said to them in my gentle German Irish way, I would I find it highly unlikely that she was at the exact same percentage on every goal every time. And there's just, I think the thing that's most frustrating for me is that there's no response. I would rather you say, Karen, you don't know what you're talking about, but it is like radio silence. And that is just, it just makes me crazy. So, the point of measuring a goal is to see if its efficacy, right? And if we need to continue it or pivot. Um, but if you weren't trained, and I love teachers, they changed my son's life. If you weren't trained, you're just doing the best that you can with what somebody else is showing you, right?
yeah, exactly,
And
very
so it's
much so.
kind of all of that is how you decided to pivot to be an advocate.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that parents don't know they have more rights than they're aware of. And I sat in many IEP meetings, and some of it even is it my own fault. I didn't know, and so I didn't provide things for parents or students that I was supposed to, but I had no idea that I was supposed to. And so once you realize, wait a minute, I should be doing this, and it's going to require, you know, additional time, additional personnel, maybe financially, whatever it requires. There was often pushback that we can't do that. We don't have the people to do it. We don't have, it's not in our budget, whatever. And so, but also, I mean, there is some of the teachers that couldn't, some of it doesn't require money or personnel. It's just we didn't know. And you feel I felt really like, okay, what I'm doing is wrong. Everybody else is doing it's wrong. We don't know it's wrong. Once you learn it, you try to make it change, but now you're doing something different than everybody else, and so it's looked upon as, oh, you know, you can't do that. So it makes the rest of us have to do it too. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, and then that really comes down to why I wanted to make the move. I really think that there is a huge, huge, enormous need to educate parents. I mean, if that's all becoming an advocate I'm able to do is educate parents that parents uh, they have the right to speak up. It's okay. An IEP meeting is a not a confrontational. Even bringing an advocate doesn't mean we have to argue.
Yeah,
It's we all should have the best interest of the student at heart. The parent obviously, does, but they don't know. I mean, the
yeah,
the worst. I mean, and honestly, this, and I know that we've talked about this. The worst the cases I saw was the bilingual, where the parents didn't speak English. They're not. I mean, they're not going to say anything, and so you
mm,
have a student who, is English is probably not being spoken, is a second language, not their native language. Um, they've learned English, they're working, they're in special ed. You have a parent comes, I mean, the only thing they do is just say yes. I've never
right,
had a student that's, I mean, we have translators for the parents, but they never ask questions ever.
right,
And
right.
and and I just find that, all right, I found that very I mean, troublesome, I guess is
Yeah.
the word. I just
Yeah. Yeah, and I've said it a million times. There is this alliance with parents and schools that, and not any different for me and all my kids. If somebody at the school says something, then it's gospel, right? And then that's it. We'll call it a day. And I think that when you realize that I mean, for me, an educational intervention is equal to a medical intervention. And
Mhm.
what I say is, we're not going to get this time back. We're not going to get this time back. And I want kids to be successful. So tell me, or share with us if you could, when you, or maybe you have or you haven't, have you let the school know that you won't be returning to school town next year?
No,
Oh,
I'm actually doing that on Monday. So, I intended on doing it earlier, but had different things, but no, a couple people know, a couple people know. So I fell into, so we're having what we call surplus lists, where they're moving students around, or meet students, moving staff around, and cutting positions. So they're down to two, or we went from two to one in our little department of the behavior support. So there's going to be one staff member, and they're going to hire a para for to help them. I Well, there's a couple of things that I think why I got chosen to be the one to leave, but that's the most obvious is I have multiple certifications, and the gentleman who is in there currently, it only has his special education certification. So and he's, I mean, he's done really well. So no issues with him at all. Great guy, and he'll do very well. But I think I also maybe being a little too vocal at times. So
yeah.
I
So,
mean,
so
that's like, I think that's what's going on. Truthfully.
right. And so what did you do to pivot to become a special education advocate?
Well, I actually have just finished my master's in special education from Lamar. I did that really just to learn. But I'll be honest with you. I learned more. I took your 2 week intensive. I learned more about special ed law, special ed process in that 2 weeks than I did in the year and a half of my master's at um, Lamar. So, granted, that's not an advocacy program. It's teaching how to how to differentiate, how a lot there. Um, but I learned so much. So basically, to become an advocate, I've done a lot of self-taught, so doing a lot of reading. I've taken your 2 week intensive. I am going to be a part of your mastermind that when you start in July, and but that's really what I've done, and I've done a lot of reading, and I've been there. I've been in the IEPs.
Yeah.
I have extensive experience doing that. I understand how to write them. I understand the problems that teachers have to no fault of their own. and
Right.
getting done. You have a teacher who's in there, has 7 classes, and they have a caseload of 35 students, and they're trying to manage the IEPs that they have, oftentimes at our campus, the inclusion, especially teachers or coaches. And so they may be in season. So now, they got to do it. I mean, it's just too much. There's not
Right.
enough. And to go back to what you've said often, and Texas is different. Texas is different. I know that I've seen people say, well, coaching and sports and academics, it doesn't come out of the budget. Well, in Texas, it does. 3 to 4% of a school's annual operating fund is dedicated on average across the state to extracurricular activities. Granted, athletics has other ways of raising money. So does band, which we have an exceptional band on my campus, our previous campus. So they have ways of raising money, and parents and fundraisers and all that.
Yeah.
But the bulk of it comes from. And so, as you have said, and an old coach, I know I'm going to light some fires here, but we've never had a problem finding a coach. We do have a problem finding special ed. I mean, we have 14 football coaches on our campus. I don't think we had that many special ed teachers on our campus.
Crazy.
I could be wrong, but if we have more than 14, it's not much.
Crazy.
So again, I know in Texas you're fighting an uphill battle about football, so that's just a road you really don't want to go down because you're not going to win. But
Right.
it is very interesting when they say we don't have the money. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I always say we have the money. It's just the appropriation of the money. And it's what we focus on, we fund, and what we care about, we fund. So if there's a teacher listening, because teachers and counselors and related service providers and principals, for me, they're one of my favorite people to train to be advocates, because they've already been there, right? They've been at the table. So what would you have to share with them if they're thinking about pivoting now or in a couple of years? What would you want to share with them?
I think the best thing is educate yourself. Find solid places. Even if I mean, honestly, the 2-week intensive, although I know it's got a lot towards advocate, it'd be a huge for just a teacher or an administrator to understand all that, just to take it so that they understand, because you're getting more knowledge, more information. I mean, and the way you do it, you can rewatch it, multiple times. So if you're interested in being an advocate, jump on board. I mean, obviously, Karen and the Special Education Academy is incredible. There's a great group of core people there every week when we get together. And although I haven't had the opportunity necessarily to utilize them from a standpoint of sending messages and asking and stuff, I know that is very much done. They work together. And but yeah, if it's something you're thinking about doing, hey, I'm retiring, I'd like to stay around. I don't want to retire. This is a great opportunity because there is definitely more demand than there is, you know, advocates out there. I think you made the comment there's 6 special education attorneys in the state of Texas,
Yeah,
which
there's
is
6 full-time special education attorneys in Texas.
that's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. But there's 775,000 children with an IEP in Texas. So
Yeah,
literally, even if you're listening from Connecticut and you said I only take clients in Texas, you'd be full. You'd have a full-time income. And even our
absolutely.
starting advocates start at, $50 an hour. That's 6 figures a year, which is probably what most teachers make, right, Alan? They make right at
Oh,
6
absolutely.
figures. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
The
get a free
the
company
upper end is
car.
6 figures. Yeah.
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 So, and you're allowed to wear jeans because we're on Zoom and nobody knows. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I'm excited to follow your success, and thank you for serving kiddos. I've always said people that are behavior specialists, like there's a special love that you have to understand, because it's not something I can quantify on a piece of paper. It's not a learning disability. It's not that you're in a wheelchair. So, thank you for serving kids, and thank you for being on. And so if you guys have any questions or you want to reach out to us, just reach out to advocate at specialeducationacademy.com. We're happy to serve you anyway, and we will see you guys in the next training. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.